Hey, Buckle Chasers. My name is Mike Iddings, and I am the host of the channel Get My Buckle. This channel is dedicated to getting the first-time buckle chaser to the red carpet in under 12 hours. And one of the ways that we do that is we get companies to align with us, give us some discount codes, and help the first-timer set the compass, save a couple bucks, get the right products. Alpine Fuel Nutrition with Lindsay. She'll give you a discount on her advice for fueling and food. Silka products, 15% off with Get My Buckle 15. Carbo Rocket, 25% off your first order with Get My Buckle. Bird Wheels, rope, spoke, carbon hoop, super compliant, super comfortable. Get My Buckle for 20% off. 100% gloves, helmets, glasses, and prescription glasses that would you can wear in the morning and all day in the afternoon as well. So Get My Buckle, we can give you the discount code for that. And then quicker stuff, last rack you'll ever buy, that's what they say. So just to let you know that I've got the experience to talk about this. I have a bunch of these babies. I got one of those, and then I have one of those. And in a couple of years, I'm going to get the even bigger one that's going to say 3,000 miles. Holy cow. But today, we're going to talk about the race with somebody who's done it 13 times in a row. He has, this is going to make it just, he's sub 8 every time, which is, I know most of us don't like him already, but he's a hell of an athlete. He's also president of Lifetime Events. And we're going to talk to Kimo Seymour. So Kimo, thank you very much for taking time out of your day, joining us, sharing your experience with the first timers. And so did Leadville find you before or after your involvement with Lifetime?
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. Glad to be here, and it's fun to that very first experience at Leadville. No one will ever forget it, and I won't forget mine either. And so I'm glad to join you and talk about it. That was well before my days at Lifetime. Actually, I had a guy that works with me right now, and many of our athletes probably come across this guy, and he's probably the most understated guy involved in all of the Leadville events. His name's Mike Melly. Good buddy of mine. We lived down in Arizona together. We were doing triathlons together. And Mike, he first thing he talked me into doing my first mountain bike race, and it was talking me into doing this race called 24 Hours in the Old Pueblo.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, no, by the way, when you do it, you need to do it on you really got to do it solo. People do it on teams, but the cool thing is to do it solo. And he says, you got to do it on a single speed too. That's the cool thing. So that was early 2007. We went down and did that 24 hours from the old Pueblo. Our buddy Todd Sadow puts on those events down there. Had a great time. As soon as we got done with that, he told me about this race in Leadville. And I'd heard a little bit about it, but not much. And yeah, Mike's the one that talked me into, we put our names in an application with 6 people, and we got drawn. We got in. I thought, what the hell did we get ourselves into? So
Right.
that was my first experience getting to the line at Leadville, well before ever joining Lifetime.
Oh, man. Well, since you touched on 24 HOP, how did you do in your single speed solo?
I mean, I think I managed to stay awake the whole night and rode the whole night. And, ended up winning the race for the single speed division. And but I had the same amount of laps as Tinker Juarez, who was on a geared bike that year. So, but Tinker had been able to stop and nap for about 2 or 3 hours and still do the same amount of laps.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
yeah, so we did the same. I think it was like, if I recall, I think it was like 289 miles on a single speed, and ended up winning the single speed division. That first race.
Oh my goodness. Way to go. 24 HOP is a great race. But
Yeah,
back to Leadville.
yeah.
So single speed, did you do Leadville on a single speed?
No. I immediately went out and bought a full suspension. Actually, no, sorry. I went out and bought a hardtail mountain bike. But yeah, I went with a geared bike.
And do you have any clue what you were running for gearing?
Man, I had no idea. I think everything was probably still a triple back then.
Right. I would think so.
And I have no idea what I was running on that thing. But but yeah, and my first, for some of you first timers out there, I know a lot of people, there's a lot of anxiety and emotion around getting to the start line and what it's like. I will tell you that I showed up in Leadville. I never rode 1 foot of that course before the race. I had absolutely zero. I looked at a map. I knew what the course looked like, a leg, and went a little south and went a little west, a little south, and then turned around and came back. And that's as much as I knew about the course. I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into.
Really? And
Yeah,
what do you remember? Well, gosh, back then there weren't corrals. So were you up at 4 in the morning and putting your bike against the banner
I
back then?
did. I got out there bright and early. As ignorant as I was, and maybe ignorance is bliss. I got out there early, thinking I was all that, and I wanted to be somewhere near the front. And again, not knowing what I was getting myself into, and I, took off like a shot, and thinking, here I am rubbing elbows with, what was it? I think that year it was Dave Weens, and it was still during the middle of his streak, and I think Floyd Landis came out that year. He had just come off of, racing the tour or whatever. And
Right?
I thinking I'm rubbing elbows with these, world famous pros, and it wasn't quite all that.
Well, I mean, that is probably one of the most unique things about Leadville is how many races can you physically rub elbows with the pros as an
Yeah.
amateur?
Yeah.
And Leadville's, I mean, I don't know. Is there another one? I mean,
There's very few. I mean, there is a lot in the gravel world, but even, as with our events, we've had to go because it's gotten so competitive, and so many people have gotten so much faster. We have had to, we had to put corrals in, and that was a tough decision. I was involved in kind of making that decision with Leadville, and it was purely because to help us with the congestion at the bottom of St. Kevin's, right? It just was just a crappy experience to show up for your first big Leadville, and 5 miles into the race, you have to get off your bike and just stand there because it's, you're pouring, 1,500 people into a funnel. They hit the bottom of St. Kevin's and everybody's walking, so the idea with the corrals was really to kind of get people around riders that were, going to be of similar capability, and then just to make it more safe.
oh no, I mean, I can understand the benefit of the corrals without question. I do. The one thing that is, since we're talking about the start, the one thing about the start that I think is unfortunate is you to start out with 2,000 people and to blow down the pavement and to come, you know what I mean, is a feeling and an experience that you cannot replicate anywhere else in the world other than that. And that was, for I don't even know, for like 15 years I got to do that. And it's just crazy. It's just a crazy, awesome experience. And it's unfortunate that they don't get that, but they get the benefit of they could ride Kevin if you're in the white or the blue or the brown, which you would not have had that luxury, earlier on when it was the mass start. But
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
cool. So anyway, you were lined up. You got up there early. You were rubbing elbows with Dave and Floyd, which is, I mean, how cool is that? And tell us, how did your day go for your first race at Leadville? And what'd you do wrong? What'd you do right? Leave
I
some
can
tips.
still remember to this day. I can't say I did much of anything wrong other than, probably the first lesson I learned was, and I tell people still to this day, you can't go too easy on St. Kevin's and probably Sugarloaf. Like I tell people you can make or break your day in the first 30 miles of that race, and most people break their day. Most people don't make their day. Most people, they go too hard. And so if anything, I can't complain. I think I went 7:58 my first time, and again throughout the day I didn't even know what kind of pace I was on. I didn't have anything that told me what I needed to do to get under a 8 or a 9 or whatever. I just had friends along the course saying, holy shit, you're flying, man. And my crew was telling me, oh, man, you're crushing it. That's about all the data I had for the day. So I probably went a little bit too hard on those first 2 climbs, but managed to keep it upright, managed to clear Columbine, I remember, and coming back, I walked power line. I remember that, and pretty much
Really?
everybody does, right? And that's okay because you get back to power line, you're pretty happy to get off your bike for a moment or two. But yeah, I think my biggest mistakes were probably, if anything, pacing in the beginning. And I think that's most people's big mistake, even to this day.
Sure. Well, right. Everybody's so amped up. I mean, I can't tell you how many crashes I've seen back when it was a mass start, uh, before you even got to Keeman.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
it's crazy because people are jacked up and they're weaving through people, the racers, and they're touching tires. And I mean, yeah, you could lose the race.
Yeah, Mike, you remember we'd have crashes at that little dip, that little rise on 6th Street. Just after the start, you drop down 5 blocks, it rises up, and we'd have a pile up there almost every year. You
Well,
know?
we had the mechanical shifting,
Oh
and
yeah.
everybody was jamming from the 10 gear up to the, back then it was probably the 44, 46, and it took a moment to get there, and or they're trying to grab 4 gears at a time, and then the derailleur would catch it. It might roll up the sprocket, or somebody would, then the accordion, then somebody would hit behind him and hit him, and oh my goodness, it was just chaos. But to make it through all the time was great because they're all good memories, because I wasn't a victim. I wasn't in the ambulance. I wasn't home, in the garage crying because my shit broke that quick. I got to finish it, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's a little bit different now with electronic shifting, and maybe people seeing the videos are able to not be as unprepared for that little climb, because it surprises you. You're hauling butt, and then all of a sudden you just go from 28 to freaking 4.
Yeah.
Oh, so do you remember your fueling?
I do actually. This was in the days of Power Bar.
Right?
I
Oh
had
my
a
God.
buddy that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
a triathlete, pro triathlete friend of mine that was sponsored by Power Bar. So I know I was, there even back then it was gels, and I think I did the entire day that year on gels and Power Bars. And I'd never done a lot of fueling from bottles. I've always kind of elected to just do electrolytes and water in my bottles, and I still kind of do to this day. And then I just like to eat. So it was my first year was 100% gels and Power Bars. And
Wow.
I don't know how I nod on those Power Bar. They weren't easy to eat when you're riding, and I'm
Like a
gnawing
bit
on
of
those
honey.
things yeah,
Pulling
yeah,
the fillings out of your teeth when you're trying to
oh
open your
yeah. Especially when they were cold. Oh yeah.
mouth. Oh my goodness. Oh, those things are crazy. It's been a while since I've heard that. I did my I did Power Bar Endurance, the powder, when they came out with that, which was part of the Power Bar thing,
Yeah.
which was a good, for me, that worked really well. Now I don't know where that went, but there was a lot of things that have replaced it, but no. So, do you remember what place you got?
I think I'm digging in the memory bank, but I think I got it was like 17th or 19th overall. And the only reason I remember that is because that was the number that I got assigned the next year. Remember that was back in the day where I think they took the top maybe 100 or so, and that would be your bid for the following year. And so I want to say it was 17th or 19th that first year.
Nice. And you were also, that was the, yeah, Red Corral.
Yeah.
You were also in the front corral if you were top 100.
Yep. Yeah. And then I got into that corral the next year. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
never made that corral. Oh my gosh. So you were 13 and 0. You never had a DNF. Did you ever come close? Did anything, did you have any mishaps? It's like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna, I don't know if I'm gonna get through this one, or
I just
you
knock
were
on wood.
sailing.
I said I always had such good luck with Leadville. Maybe it's luck, maybe it's preparedness. I don't know. You could argue either way. I've crashed one time in 13 years on power line. Got on the wrong side of one of those ruts descending, on the outbound, and got a wheel into it. Went down, and it was funny. I remember standing up and my knees, it's bleeding, it's gushing, and yeah, one of the you probably heard Ken Clover, and it hit me at the time. He's I could just hear in my head what would Ken say, and Ken said rub some dirt on it and keep going. And I literally grabbed a handful of dirt, rubbed it on my knee, stopped the bleeding, jumped on my bike, and kept going and finished the race.
Oh
And
man.
it works. And there everybody's going to have setbacks. And you're going to have, one of the things I will tell you is that in all 13 years of doing Leadville, I have never had a race that I didn't at some point during the race try to talk myself into quitting. I mean, everybody does. Everybody and everybody will come up with an excuse. Your back's hurting, you're this, and you try to create a narrative and a story that you're gonna feel good about telling everybody why you quit that day,
Yeah.
but in the end, you're not gonna quit. You can't quit. And you hear that from Ken before the race, and it just resonates with you throughout the day. And it has for all those years. And you find a way through. But I'm telling you, everybody that rides that race, at some point in their day will be thinking of a reason that it would be okay to quit right now. And you just got to keep pedaling.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. It could because and for a sub 8 racer, you might think about that once during the day. For a sub 12 racer, you might think about that 50 times during the day. But be rest assured, the graph is going to look like this. Oh my God, I'm feeling so good. I cleared the hill. It's not going to last. And then it's going to go like this. And you're going to be down here and your foot's going to go numb and your hands and you're going to be like, why? This never happened before. Why is this going wrong? What's going on? That'll dissolve as well. And then you're going to get on a high and then you're going to get on a low. And this is what your emotional graph is going to look like all 12 hours. So just be patient. It's if it's negative, it's going to get better. If it's positive, it's probably going to calm down a little bit. But coming through the middle, just the average is going to work out. It's going to get you the red carpet. But it is, I don't know. It's nice to hear that people that are that fast and that gifted and that in shape still have the same thoughts as the normal folks who are back there on that bike for a lot longer going, oh my goodness, what is going on?
Yeah.
So, oh man, you're human.
Yeah,
You're human.
you just got to figure out a way to kind of moderate those highs, because the highs will get they can get you in trouble. You'll be on a high and you'll be feeling great and you'll push yourself a little too hard. And 10 minutes later, you feel like you just crashed and you're in a gutter somewhere. And you got to figure out how to pull yourself up. And I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, I tell people, when you hit those lows, one, recognize it. Two, just back off. You only got to back off for, a little bit. I think that one mistake people make is they try to push through those lows and they think, I'm going to push harder. I'm going to push harder. I'm going to push harder. That's when you just give yourself a little bit of grace, back off a little bit, eat something, drink something. Most people, 10, 15 minutes of, back off the pace, get a little bit of nutrition in you, a little bit of hydration. You'll come back to life. And we all kind of go through those ups and downs. I'm telling you, the guys setting the records and everybody from there to the last finisher goes through those same highs and lows. And it's just a question of how you manage them.
Right. How you manage them. I do agree with that, because there's a lot of things can happen during the day, right? A lot. I mean, there's a lot has to align on race day for you to cross that red carpet in time.
Yep.
So, but it's it's nice to hear that everybody's out there hurting a little bit as well, whether it's for 2 minutes or 2 hours. It's it's just misery loves company, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And so I touched on, I think I asked you this off camera, but do you remember the year that Lifetime took over and what year the buckles switched from the old logo to, well, the old logo is this logo for you guys who might not know. And then now all the buckles have this logo on them.
Yep.
You recall those years?
I think Lifetime took over the event in 2010, and then I think, or sometime it might have been right after the 2010 event, and then I think it was 2011 that the buckles and the logo switched to the current logo.
Yep. Nope, it's good. It looks good. And that's consistent. It's great.
Yeah, and I mean it's good. It's a great, it is a great logo. It's become so recognizable. I will tell you though, even working for Lifetime, when I got my 1,000-mile buckle, Ken and Marilee had one made for me with the old logo on it. So
Did they really?
a little bit of a throwback. So it's kind of cool. My 1,000-mile buckle still has the old logo on it.
Oh my goodness. Are you going to go for your 2000?
Yeah, I don't know that I will. I had a nice streak there, And again, then COVID came along, and I'm, being on the other side, working for Lifetime and being involved with the events. That was a pretty challenging year to get through, and decided to take a year off then. And as it kind of takes over your life in the summer. You kind of need to structure everything you do every summer around, if you're gonna do it consistently and do well, you'll find yourself adjusting everything else in your life to fit your training and fit your schedule. And it has an impact on your family, your work, your work life balance. You're trying to squeeze in that training, and it's challenging. And so it took me a while to recognize how much it was impacting my life to do it every single year at the level I was doing it. So I think if I were to come back, I need to be of a mindset that I can take a little bit more moderate approach, and maybe do it just for enjoyment, maybe to ride with some friends, maybe not try to be so competitive. And I think I'm beyond those competitive years. So if and when I do, I think it'll be on a little different level.
Yeah. Will you do you think you'd be an automatic silver corral? I think you know a couple people.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would ask that. I would probably put myself where I think where I realistically could finish. Because that's the goals with the corrals, right? We want to get the riders around people that they're most likely going to spend most of the day with anyways. It doesn't do any good to have people that are going to do 12 hours start with, 9-hour riders, because they're just going to go backwards all day. And then that just creates a traffic jam out on the course, and it's not good for anybody's experience. So the whole goal is, like I said earlier, to get people placed around riders of fairly likability.
No, I think, I mean, I totally get it. And I think for I'm usually in, green, orange, maybe red. Um, it works. I mean, it really does, because if you've done a qualifier or your past Leadville race or whatever, you enter Kevin, and if you're at the front of the pack, you're going to probably just ride with everybody. And if you're at the back of the pack and you step off, or dab or whatever, it's definitely not as impacting to the rest of the corral or the field, because there's so many less people, it's so less volume of people. So
Right.
I mean, I think it's done a great. I think it's done great, because there were a long time ago, there'd be people who were super fast in the flats, and as soon as they got to the bottom of Kevin, the wheels came off the wagon. And
Yeah.
there might have been 20 of those people in front of you, and it was just a line of walkers across, and you're yelling, if you could yell, if you had enough air, to try and let them know you're coming. I'm clearing it, you're not, give me some room. I mean, that was a completely different first part of the race. um, and I know that a lot of the people that I talk to, I think the have you heard the same thing, that the white and the brown corral, there's still some hike a bike up Kevin, and there's still a little bit of congestion back there.
I have. Yeah, I've heard that. But I also think, from what I've heard, a lot of those riders are probably going to get off and walk a chunk of that anyways. So, it's not causing quite the congestion that it used to. It's definitely made that St. Kevin's climb more efficient.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and if you're I don't know, I ought to be careful about how I say this, but if you're pushing Kevin out of the white corral, you probably didn't check the fitness box quite as good as you should have.
You might be in that crowd that's worrying about making the cutoff at Twin Lakes that day.
Right.
If you're walking at Kevin's, yeah, you may be looking at a shorter day than everybody else.
A shorter day, right? It's still gonna hurt just as much, I bet you, but might be a
It
little bit
belong to you, but your day might get shortened.
Oh my goodness. So I know from talking to you just at the races that you had a knee replacement, and you want to share some of that. You know, how did you get to the point where it's like, oh my God, I can't ride, or I can't walk, or I can't whatever. And did you do that after your 13th?
I
Or was
did.
it like
So yeah,
was it hurt like 2
yeah,
years?
I had a knee replacement a year ago, about last week actually. And then a year almost to the date. So just this last week, I had a hip replacement. So I'm same side, wear and tear. And it all started, I was a kid. I was trying to be a ski racer as a young kid, alpine ski racer, and tore up my knee early on. I think I was a sophomore in high school, and it's just kind of been it's kind of been downhill from there. And I've just a lot of wear and tear. I did a stint as prior to discovering Leadville, I was an Ironman triathlete, and I don't normally admit that publicly very often, but did a lot of years as a racing triathlons, and before I got smart, and that good buddy of mine that talked me into doing my first mountain bike race, who works for us, Mike Melly, he and I used to do triathlons together, and it took me a while when I did that first mountain bike race. That was when I realized that my perfect triathlon was one where I wouldn't have to swim or run. So that's when I figured out that let's just go ride a bike. It's so much. But I wish I would have discovered that earlier in life, but I didn't, and I beat myself up, and I've done it all to myself over the years, and I'm also really lucky in that I recover really quickly from these things, and I was back out riding last summer, pretty quickly after the knee replacement, and I think I'll be back on the bike here in a couple of weeks, at least trying to get a little bit of health and fitness back. So yeah, so knee and hip here on the same side, all just from wear and tear from years of abuse.
Wow. And could you, with that, if if your head was in the right place and your work schedule allowed it, would you be able to go back and do an Ironman or Leadville again if you wanted to? I mean,
I don't think
are you
I don't
healthy
think
enough?
I don't think an Ironman's in the cards, because I think with replaced joints, I don't think it's smart to start running on them again. So I think, I need to make these things last. I don't want to go through it again. So a little bit of hiking, maybe a little trail running, but no extensive running. But biking, I mean, they strongly encourage you to get back on the bike. It's one of the best forms of therapy for these joint replacements. So lucky that I should be able to be back out on the bike here pretty quick.
Nice. Well, if anybody's hurting with those, with the knee and the hip, there's good, there's some light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Yeah.
You can do
Yeah,
it.
and I think taking it from what I hear, I think the recovery is kind of dictated by your condition when as you go into them, and I think healthier, fitter people seem to, knock on wood, but seem to recover a little quicker than people that aren't so healthy. So I'm pretty lucky to recover pretty quickly from these things.
Well, and to tangent off that, I can't agree with you more because I was training for Leadville and then I had my heart attack and my stents, and I was able to recover from my stents, and then 46 days after my surgery was on the starting line of the 100. And it's, I would have, number one, I wouldn't have survived the heart attack if I wouldn't have been in the shape I was and always pushing, because they told me that um, because I was always pushing and asking for blood, my system, that's when my body knew the closure's happening. We're going to prepare for it because we know we need the volume. So it grew two collaterals over the blockage. And then when it closed, it just said, okay, open the other lines. We're good. We're ready. And I
Yeah.
was able to, continue. And that happened to be in the silver 50. I don't know if you know the 50 course well.
Oh yeah.
So when you're heading up California Gulch, you kind of go left and you're almost at the top, and then you make a hard right turn, and this is where all the water's running down.
Oh yeah.
At that exact moment, I started to feel, my chest getting tight and my headache and my arms, feeling weird, my hands going numb, and I'm just thinking, 12,000 feet, man, you got to back off. And backed off, and started to feel better, and kept going. And but I would have, if I would have been a normal, or not a normal, if I would have been not as active, I would have shoveled snow or something, and that, I would have called for blood and I wouldn't have been able to, and I'd had my heart attack and died.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Leadville saved my life, and that's why I do this, and that's why, I did my buckle podium and all that other stuff. I just try and give back, because if it wasn't for Leadville, I would not be here. So, you're right. If you're an athlete and you're in shape and you have these things, replaced or scoped or whatever it is, your recovery time is a lot less. And I just, every day, man, every day I think of that. And I think of that and I say, thank you, Leadville. Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. Now I guess thank you, Lifetime. But
Every day is a blessing. Yeah.
every day is a blessing, right? For sure. So knees, hip, anything else as you're getting older? Stents, what else?
Only a few
What do we
things
keep
here.
having to overcome?
Yeah, I've had to overcome a few things, but we all have, nobody cares. It's how you get back. Yeah, it's how you get back out there, and yeah, it's a joy. And I have one of the best jobs in the world, getting to work on these events and all of our lifetime events and such a great company and being involved. I'll tell you, a little story that I haven't told publicly a lot, but prior to coming to Lifetime, I actually went up to Leadville and I got introduced to Ken and Marilee, and I tried to buy it. I tried to buy Leadville. And so then when I came to Lifetime a year or so, they ended up selling to Brom and in Lifetime, and it was maybe 9 months later that I met him and had the opportunity to come to work with Lifetime and to get involved. And the first thing I did with Lifetime was lead the Leadville Race Series. And my job has evolved, and I've grown into manage a variety of different businesses for Lifetime over the years now. It's coming up on 14 years with the company. I joined shortly after the 2011 event. But one of the greatest things about Leadville is just what we get to do for that community. It's not only a bunch of what we get to do for the athletes, but boy, what the race series does for the community between the Lifetime Foundation and the Leadville Trail Legacy Foundation. It's just, there's something special about this, and how much this group of athletes, our community of athletes and Lifetime and everything and the event series itself gives back to that community. It's just so fun to be a part of something like that. It's not just another race. It changes people's lives, and it's changed that community. And I think largely for the better, and so it's fun to be a part of all that.
Oh, for sure. And you know, you just touched on the foundations, but another economic influx of money is from the training. People, it's not just race weekend. It is there, and it's not just the race series, time frame from the day the first one starts till the run. I mean, people are coming up there now early as they can, training, getting up there, getting acclimated, seeing what they can do, figuring out how elevation affects them. I mean, my goodness, I looked at houses 15 years ago for $60,000 in downtown Leadville. It didn't happen for whatever reason, but now, oh my gosh, you can't, the real estate prices have went up crazy. The land is, very expensive. Across from Safeway, didn't that start out as low income housing and then kind of shifted gears to $800,000 condos? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big change from back in the day when we were coming up here and you could, you could park anywhere, you could camp almost anywhere. I mean, they had room, it's just totally different. And now, if you're not booking in October for next year's race, you're not going to find a spot, unless you bump into a cancellation or something. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, let the race is done. Well, it's resurrected the town, right? I mean, that was Ken's goal, and it did it, and
Yeah.
it's successful, and it's my goodness. Now we have two bike shops, right?
Yeah,
Two
it
bike.
is pretty amazing. We have a group do a local economic impact study every year, and it's all an estimate, but by their estimate, I don't remember the exact number, but I think we're up to an estimated roughly $25 million a year in local economic impact from the race series, and that's direct and indirect, and I think that's the second largest economic driver in the community outside of the mine. And it is because it's not just the race weekends. It is, I mean, 2 weeks ago, I mean, people are already up there training. But back in May, people are up there training, and it runs through, and then people are still coming even after the events in August. people are still coming up and using the trails and getting up and experiencing Leadville so that they can experience and get ready for one of the events. And so it really is pretty cool to see the impact that that the race series has on that community.
If I just want to make sure I heard you right. You said you're estimating 25 million a year
A year.
pushed into that
Yeah.
town.
Yep.
Wow,
Yep.
that's just, I mean, that's just awesome. I mean, oh my goodness, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And that's grown significantly since we've gotten involved and as the series, as the race series has grown and become more and more popular. So it's really it's fun to be a part of that.
Oh, for sure. And then you said that you got one of the greatest jobs in the world, and when you said that, I picture you in the helicopter with the headset on, and I think back, to the early days when Ken and Mary Lee were on the quad chasing us they've got your strategic points on the course that they can get to easily on the quad and route us on. And I mean, that was back in the day, right? Ken and Mary Lee on the quad. And now we've got Kimo, and who's your lady?
The last couple of years it was Janelle
Janelle.
commentating on the race. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you guys are in a Lifetime helicopter, headset it up, seatbelt hanging out the window, commenting, chasing Keegan, chasing whoever around the course. I mean, man, that go next level.
Well, that's part of how, the events have evolved, and the event industry has evolved. It is that, people, people want to see, they want, you got to put your event or you got to put your entertainment, basically, you're creating entertainment out of these things now. You got to put it in the palm of their hand, right? So they need to be able to watch it on their phone or watch it on their iPad or on their TV at home. And so, with the advent of social media, and then since social media, the ability to live broadcast, even, I don't know if you saw, but we just did a full live broadcast of Unbound, our gravel event in Kansas. And so we've evolved from just, a YouTube post event, recap video, like what we've done the last couple of years for Leadville, to now a fully live broadcast. And we're working on and hoping to be able to do a live broadcast for Leadville this year as well. So it's created an opportunity to create even more exposure for the events, for the athletes, for the community. It's evolved so much. I know there was a time way back when Ken and Mary Lee got, the Leadville 100 was on ABC's Wide World of Sports, on a Saturday afternoon. And boy, has it ever changed since then, right? Because that was all, pre-produced, and then they would roll it whenever, sometime, some date down the line. But now we're to a point where we're talking about doing it, a live broadcast of Leadville, which would be just amazing.
Oh yeah, and I've seen that. Was it Peter Lampley? I think was the
He was a commentator.
commentator, and talking about that, and Lori Brandt and John Stamstead, and and then you had to wait, right? You had to know when it was coming. It's going to be on Saturday on whatever, September 25th. We got to sit down. It's going to be at 8 o'clock, and you'd have to be in front of the TV to get to enjoy that and to get that information. And now it's like you're on your phone and just like hit play and
On demand whenever you want. Yeah. And that's, you have to meet people. You have to meet your consumer where they are. They don't come to
right.
you anymore. You have to meet them where they are, when they are.
And you're talking about doing a live broadcast for the mountain bike race this year?
We are. We're trying to figure out if we can. The biggest challenge with live broadcast is the connectivity. And as up and down these mountains and valleys, there's not a lot of cell connectivity. So we have to figure out how to create connectivity. And what we did at Unbound is we did most of it with Starlink.
Yeah.
But Starlink, we found real quick, doesn't work real well when you get into trees. When you get, that you get a lot of broken coverage and broken connectivity when you're in the trees. So we're still exploring how we can get the connectivity to create enough continuity that we'd be able to create a live show for the Leadville 100 this year. So we're working on it. Not ready to commit to it yet, but hoping to be able to do it this year.
But when you're saying in the trees, so you're talking about the guy that's on the motorcycle with the camera trying to film, the racers on course, not necessarily from above.
Correct. Right. You
Wow.
got a guy down there in the trees going up Kevins or, coming across up towards Sugarloaf or, all across Pipeline, all that stuff. The whole first, whatever, 4 or 5 miles of Columbine. It's so treed in, you just don't
Right.
get great connectivity from Starlink. So, and there's no cell service on a good chunk of those areas. So the helicopter actually has been one of the solutions that's worked because it's free of the clouds. We got really good coverage with from the helicopter at Unbound. So that may be part of the solution. But the challenge with the helicopter, now you're above the trees, you can't see the riders, right? So much, it's tough to figure out who's where on course. So yeah, we've got some obstacles to overcome to be able to do it for Leadville.
Well, it's super awesome that that Lifetime is figuring it out, right? We're gonna figure it out, whatever it takes. It's like finishing the race. You guys are gonna dig deep. You're gonna figure it out. You're gonna make it happen, whatever it takes. And we're gonna have a live broadcast one day. It's gonna be super cool.
We're gonna try. We'll get there.
All right. Well, let's circle back a little bit to bike stuff. Um, if you're, for the what's your recommendation for what's your perfect bike for Leadville?
Now it's ironically the last few years I rode Leadville, I went from starting on a hardtail, I went to riding a variety of full suspension bikes. I went back to a hardtail the last, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years. I did it. I liked the hardtail. I don't like that mushy feeling, when you stand up or when you're grinding some of those climbs on a full suspension bike, plus the weight penalty, right? So, but nowadays they've gotten the technology has gotten so good. If I go back and do it, I probably would go back to a full suspension. They've gotten them so light. I've got a 110 travel mountain bike, full suspension mountain bike that's 20 and a half pounds. And, so you don't have as much of a weight penalty and that cushion, that little bit of relief, I think, you benefit from the decrease in fatigue over that many hours of getting bounced around on a hardtail. So I think, I've now shifted back to my ideal bike would be a really, really super lightweight, full suspension trail bike, 110 or 120 mil of travel.
All right. Um, are you dropper or solid post?
I've never ridden a dropper post. I just have never gotten used to it. Leadville's not one where I think you need it. I'm sure, a lot of mountain bike purists would say, sure, you need it coming down down power line or maybe the top of Columbine, the goat trail. Other than that, I'm not sure when you need that dropper post in a race like Leadville.
Yeah, I haven't. I have never made the switch.
Yeah.
It's just not me. I like having that seat back there that I can hold on to and steer with my hips, and it's old school, but it's still working.
I'm still with you. I grab that thing between my legs, and that's kind of how I steer and kind of how I'm just old school and been used to doing that for so long. When I ride, I do have a bike with a dropper post, but on some real technical stuff, when you really need to get back behind the seat, then it's great. Then I enjoy having the dropper post. But if you're moving down power line and stuff, I like that extra control.
Yeah, I agree. Um, so what's your tire choice?
Oh boy, well, it's been a few years, but
No sponsors, influence here. Just your tire choice.
oh well, I tell you, width wise, I've always gone with a narrower tire in the back. I think my last few years I was doing like a 2.1 in the back and a 2.3 on the front. Get a little bit of more control on the front and a little bit more speed out of the rear. And there's so much road, both pavement and gravel at Leadville that I always went with a pretty low pro knobby. You don't need a whole lot of knob at Leadville, right? So yeah, but I always went with kind of a mullet setup with the tires.
Do you remember the days of the snake bellies?
No, I don't.
No. Oh man. Okay, Paneracer.
Okay.
The center tread almost was a slick. It had tiny, tiny, tiny little bumps on it, and then it had big edge knobs. And I had, I forget what happened. One of my races, something broke, and I swapped in, and it was kind of muddy. and I had to swap my rear wheel, and the one I had that Pan Racer snake belly on it. And even with that, I could clear Powerline inbound. So when you said you don't need a lot of traction on the tires for Leadville, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think the perspective should be more focused on your rolling resistance and your efficiency, because you're gonna make, you're gonna have the traction.
Yeah.
And then, did you ever take a look at Dave Ween's bike that's hanging in the retail store?
Oh yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you seen the tires on that?
No, I've never really looked at it.
Take a close look. It's his ergon bike,
Yeah.
and the tread on the tires are tiny little clovers.
Hmm.
Just, I mean, we're talking 3 millimeter in tread depth, tiny, but they've got to be super, super, super fast.
Yeah.
So for your first timers, you do not need a humongous knobby, you want something that's gonna be high rolling efficiency.
Yeah.
That's gonna be your tire, your good tire. There's plenty to choose from, but I think that's more of the category you want to look at, is something that's gonna roll fast, because you're gonna, that's gonna give you more, that's gonna serve you better for your buckle than super knob traction.
I agree.
Yeah. So you got the tires. You remember your air pressures? Different with
Oh,
tubes, right?
tubes and I could never bring myself to drop below like 35 pounds. I was always, just
Really?
super high pressure, and it just begrudgingly worked my way down into the 20s, but way back then, and I see all these pros showing up with, 23 pounds, 22 pounds, super, they say, oh, the traction and the rolling resistance is the same and what. I just didn't believe it. When we were still running tubes, I just was stuck to high pressure. Again, old school,
Well,
probably
old
coming from
school,
coming from the triathlon roadie days. I just believed in high pressure was lower resistance.
right? And less pinch flats,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Ty Hall. I was talking to Ty Hall in this show, and Ty's like, "Man," he says, "I think I run." He says, "I think I run 50s." He says, "I don't want a pinch flat. It's the last thing in the world I want is a stupid flat." So I pump them up, and it's like I just chuckle, because I do too. It's like I run high pressure in mine.
Yep.
I hear people 18, 21. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Well, the only time I ever really regretted it is coming down Columbine. Once you're down on that road, then you wish you were at 20 pounds, right? Because those
Yeah,
corners, you're coming around all those however many 7 or 8 hairpin corners. You don't want that's when you don't want that high pressure, because you're sliding all over the place. The rest of the course, you can kind of get away with it.
for sure. And the things that you're hitting on the Columbine descent, you're doing 35 miles an hour.
Oh yeah.
So if you hit something, man, you're hitting it hard,
Yep.
no doubt. All right. So are you a bottle guy, or are you a hydration pack guy?
I've never used a hydration pack at Leadville. I've always been a bottle guy. Like I said earlier, I've never had or taken nutrition through my bottles. I've always preferred to kind of keep the bottles focused on hydration, electrolytes, and water, and do all my nutrition through food and gel. And so I've never I've never tried a hydration pack at Leadville.
Huh. Interesting. That's good for you. I think that's, I don't know. I personally think, I talk about the first timers, you got to keep your tank full. You can't drop to half, because then if you have some kind of a negative event where you don't eat for an hour, now you're on E and you can't recover. And if you're on the start, if you're flying down the start, if you're not super comfortable and confident to take your hand off the bar and drink while you're flying, don't. I mean, that's good hydration pack alternative to have the hose. When you're approaching Kevin, it's going to be more congested. If you can, but you still need to drink early, drink often. That's Rose Grant, man. That's her advice.
Yeah.
So you need to do it. And if you aren't confident, even climbing, can you climb up Kevin with one hand and drink? I don't know, but you could definitely get the hose over there from the pack much easier.
Yeah, and I think I think the reason that bottles work, if you're, if you're sub 8, sub 9, if you look at the time segments between each of the times you hit your cruise, outbound at Pipeline, outbound Twin Lakes, inbound, at the, Pipeline. And then you get one, the hottest part of the day is almost always going to be, climbing power line. But then you get that opportunity at the top of Carter, or not Carter. Is it Carter Summit? Is that, yeah, like where we turn
Yeah.
off the road, Carter
Yes.
Summit,
Top of
you got
Turquoise Lake
that.
Road.
Yeah, exactly. You've got that little neutral aid there. So if you're out by there, you're pretty much done with your climbing for the day. You can take, top off a bottle real quick. But you could, at least for me, I was always lucky to be able to kind of get by on 2 bottles for each of those segments of the course. If I was much longer than those time segments, yeah, the packs might be a great idea. They're also easy to swap. Your crew can throw you a new pack, real quick, and you can exchange and keep moving pretty quickly. So, I'd encourage anybody that plans to be out there longer than 8 hours, probably think about doing a pack, at least for some of the bigger segments between aid stations.
Yeah, and plus, with the full suspension bikes, the geometry is so different. You might not have 2 bottle cages,
Right.
right? It's just different now. So,
Yeah.
it might be a good hydration pack, might end up being a really good choice for 12-hour bubble people, because your time between aid stations is longer, and you've
Right.
got to have the fuel all the way through. That's
Yeah.
for sure. So with the outward, what was the outward bound change? The opportunity to get rid of that. What did that end up being? A mile worth of pavement that they cut off? Where they did the hypotenuse of the triangle through the grass?
On that corner there,
Yeah.
yeah, it was there was a variety of different factors, but trying to get off the old power line, or sorry, pipeline road over there. We looked for Tamara looked for an opportunity to put it in a little bit different location, and we've run the 100 run through that outward bound piece of property for years, and it worked out really good. So it's a little bit easier for traffic management. One of the biggest challenges and limiting factors for these especially the 2 Leadville 100s, is, one of our biggest challenges is how to support all the crews that want to come out and help all the athletes. And we have such a challenge with parking and getting crews to the aid stations, that the idea of using that, there's a whole lot more space there at that outward bound property that we used last year. And by bringing everybody out there, we could shuttle people from there. They took away a bunch of the parking we had at Twin Lakes last year. They wanted us to reduce the number of cars traveling to and from Twin Lakes and that aid station. So that allowed us to park more people there on the outward bound property, have the aid station there, and then run shuttles to shuttle crews from outward bound over to Twin Lakes and back. So we could still get crews. They could still crew for their riders at both locations, but we didn't have the parking for them out at Twin Lakes. So we expanded that outward bound state. We moved it. That gave us more room to park more people there and then run shuttles back and forth.
Oh man. Okay. I never really got the reasoning behind that, and then the shuttle, the red silver only people that were able to park up at Twin Lakes for that. For the
Yeah, and the logic for that, it wasn't whatever privilege because they're faster or whatever. It was because if you think about it logistically, how quickly a silver or gold rider is going to get from that outward bound aid station across power line or pipeline to Twin Lakes. Some of them are, those fast guys are getting there in 30 minutes,
right.
30, 45 minutes. Well, we knew we wouldn't be able to get the shuttles. We couldn't get the shuttles as fast as we needed to get people there. So for those early corrals, we needed to let them get there, crew their people, jump in their car and drive over. So I think we got limited to, I don't know the exact number. I want to say we were limited to 100 or 150 cars at Twin Lakes last year. It was all the county wanted us to have out there. So to do that, we just limited it to the faster riders because those are the ones that we knew we wouldn't be able to shuttle their crews fast enough. You know, we couldn't get the buses loaded quick enough and get them moved over there so that they could be at Twin Lakes for their riders in time.
Right. And they leave quick enough so that the backpack ride racers their crews are still coming.
Yep.
Where the red has come and gone.
Right.
So there's a lot of there's a lot of logic to that, which is great.
Yeah, it opened up more parking, and then we got those, and then we got those later corrals, and those rides are taking an hour and a half to get from that outward bound field over to Twin Lakes, and so we could manage getting their crews shuttled over on shuttle buses.
No, super. Yeah, and what do they limit? How many people actually are entered into the race? What's the threshold for that number?
I think our permit for the Leadville 100 mountain bike, I think it's 2,000 riders. It might be 1,800. I can tell you, since I've been involved, we've actually, we've had high 1,700s, and we've had low 1,1500s start. In my mind, I've always thought the sweet spot is probably somewhere between 15 and 1,600 riders. And that's not only, one of the things we always look at is, we're always thinking about the experience for the athletes. But in this case, like I was just talking about, we also have to think about the experience for the crews. Because as you know, some of these riders have 3-4 people that are out there crewing for them. And so you've seen the party that pops up at Outward Bound, what is now Outward Bound, and then Twin Lakes. I mean, it's quite a spectacle. And the more riders we have, the more crew members we have. And so some of it is just limited by the overall experience with the total number of people that we have out there on the course every year. So it feels to me like the sweet spot is somewhere probably around 1,600 riders is about where we want to land.
Wow. And do you have the data for how many people actually throw their name into the hat to get to that 16 or 1,800, racers that get the confirmation email?
Yeah, we do. We don't publish the total lottery numbers, so people can get in through a variety of different ways. And we don't make the total lottery numbers public, but the lottery is one way. Obviously, as we've over the years added more and more qualifiers, more people are getting in through qualifying events. And we just announced, as you probably heard, Coldwater Trail, a new qualifier down in Anniston, Alabama. This fall will be a qualifier for 2026. I think that's our eighth qualifier we'll have now for the 100 mountain bike. It actually happens to be we have a run event there that's going to be a qualifier for the run as well. But so yeah, we know with a fair degree of certainty each year how many riders are going to defer. And then we also know, within a fair, estimation how many riders are just going to no-show. It's amazing. We still have a fair amount of no-shows. So we give people the opportunity to defer up until a certain date before the event. And a lot of people do that once they've gotten in, but then life happens, things come up, they know they're not going to be able to make it. We give them the opportunity to defer to the next year. But then we also have a good percentage. It's pretty crazy, but a lot of times close to 10% of people that just no-show. So
really,
yeah, so we try to manage knowing that we're going to get those kind of numbers. And then the other element we have to manage is those qualifiers. As we get closer to the event, we have to kind of guess how many of those riders, if you qualify at Silver Rush, you have the option to race this year or next year. We have to kind of guesstimate how many people are going to do that, are going to take it and race this year, and how many are going to use their entry to race next year.
No, yeah, no, that's got to be a lot to manage. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a bit of a juggling act, and but we've gotten it down to a pretty good science. So again, we'd always rather err on the side of less riders than too many, but every once in a while we get surprised, and we'll get close to 1,700 riders, and that's typically not our optimal experience.
Yeah, because when they changed the course to go instead of riding up the single track, back in the day, there were not people coming down the single track, or back then it was the North Face. There weren't people coming down there and then the leaders going up there. The gap was just so much greater. But now with technology and fueling and athletes training year round, and I mean, just everything is advanced to that point. Is it? Was it accurate that they made that shift because of the single track two-way traffic?
It was, yeah.
Really?
I made that decision a couple years ago, and it was because of it was really because of the corrals. And as we tried to create a little bit more space and a gap for those elite riders at the start of the race, well, now that puts them even that much further out in front of all the age group riders. And so we were getting to a point where it was, I mean, there was a train of people going down that single track, and we had the elite riders already coming back. It was amazing to see. Yeah, I remember being out there and seeing like, gosh, these guys have been to the top of Columbine and back. And there is a train of riders still just getting off the pavement onto that single track.
Right.
And it was really more a bad experience for those age group riders, because they feel bad. They want to get out of the way of the pros coming back,
Sure.
and it just created quite a cluster there on that single track. So I think it's been about 2-3 years ago, made the decision to route them around and come up that little valley. They come up now and skip the single track. The other funny thing is I always hated that single track on the way back. So the team thought when I made that decision that I was doing it for myself. But single track on the way back. But
Well, if I would have been on the board to make that decision, I would have voted for the Valley coming up as well.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
that single track, just I don't know, there's just something about that I just did not enjoy coming home. I'd
I
rather
know,
go up power
mentally,
line than the single track.
mentally it was just tough, and then little stinker. You get up that single track and then you got to climb that little stinker, and that's the other one. So yeah, put those two together. It was a good reason to make that shift.
Right. Have you ever cleared Little Stinker?
I've cleared little stinker, but I think 9 times out of 10, I probably walk that, end up getting up and walk that last 20-30 feet.
Yeah, that was I think a couple of times I cleared that, and I was really happy to do it. I don't know if it was smart to do it, but it was just one of the mental victories of the day, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not going to get a sub 9 buckle, I'm clearing Little Stinker and I'm clearing power line. Damn it!
Power line. Yeah. Yeah, I remember one of the years I was just having a rough day, and I thought, yeah, whatever happens, I'm gonna clear power line. I remember I cleared power line, but I think 4 people walked past me going up. Like
Really?
they're walking faster than you can ride power line. So I'm like, well, that
Wow!
doesn't give me any good.
Oh, holy cow! I wouldn't have thought that, especially you.
Yeah.
Me,
Oh, you're,
I'm in my
you
30s.
know, yeah, you're barely moving if you're pedaling power line. You probably walk it faster.
Huh? Yikes! All right. Well, so is there anything from the lifetime side or the promoter side or whatever that you'd like to share or you'd like to let the racers know? um I don't know, to just double down on something or remind them, or talk about etiquette at the starting line. I heard there was, they had the meeting in town.
Yeah, so I would encourage everybody to show up at the athlete meeting. That's really it's kind of core to the experience. And I'm with you. I remember those days in the Sixth Street gym, and that was a profound experience for me in my first years with Leadville. And I would encourage, we've had to move it. We've moved it outdoors, moved it out to the football field down at the high school. I'd encourage everybody to be there. I think the biggest thing that I would encourage any listeners is just show a little respect to the community. That's, one of the challenges we have. We come in and we take over what's a very small community, and it can have a lot of, we talked earlier about all the positive impacts that the Leadville Race Series has on the community of Leadville. But to some of the people that are locals, it has some negative impacts. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of cars parked everywhere, riders everywhere. We hear stories every year of athletes, just pulled over peeing in someone's yard, on the side of the road or whatever. Like, just a little respect for the community. Trash is always a big deal. We ask riders, just do not drop your trash under any circumstances on the course. We have crew of people that go out and clean up the course after the race, but a little bit of etiquette and respect for the community would go a long ways. And these communities they hold the keys to these events. They are their events. They're not our events. They are the community's events. Without the community, the event doesn't exist. And so we need we need the community to know and understand and appreciate more of the positive impacts than the negative ones. And so we love people to come up and enjoy that. Leadville is one of the most beautiful places in the country. It's a beautiful old town, a lot of heritage, but show a little bit of respect too for the community is all we would ask.
Yeah, amen to that. Are the is the friction that was up on Columbine with the owner, is that put to rest and everything's good? And I know that a couple of years ago there was some, I don't know what it was. I mean, it wasn't in it, but I just know that there was some possibility of having to struggle up Columbine or access.
Yeah, I went out and met with that landowner up there, and actually took him up in the helicopter so he could kind of show us areas, the areas where he's got a shooting range up there, and he and his buddies get out and shoot their rifles and whatnot. And you got riders coming through at all times of the year, and they're getting off their bike right there on his property and stuff. And so again, it's just showing a little respect for for that community. And I think, I think we won him over in his support, and he just wanted to be heard. And I think that's what a lot of people in the community want. They want to be heard. They want to be heard how how the events impact them. Obviously, Columbine is it's a staple. It's a unique feature in the event, and everybody wants to go out and ride it beforehand so they can experience it. Well, he owns a chunk of that road up there, and we're riding right through his property. And I think he's been gracious and supportive for a lot of years. And I think he just needed to be heard, and he needed to be understood. And so we had a really good, this is, I think, year before last. Went out there and met with him, flew him around up there so he could show us the kind of limits of his property. And since then, he's been pretty supportive.
That's great to hear. And for me, I am a landowner in Leadville, and I go up there quite a bit, and I'm immersed in the locals, and I do hear a lot. I do hear a lot of the bar talk BS stuff about Lifetime and whatever, and some of it can be negative, but it sure is. It sounds to me like Lifetime is in 100%. They go above and beyond. They go next level to make sure that the community is taken care of, that that the landowner is heard. That I mean, I just love it. It's so nice to hear. So that if I ever do have get into conversation at the other level, that I can shed a light on. Man, you might want to look up or research or talk to somebody else and and really understand what Lifetime does for you, and and tries, you know what I mean? It's great to hear that, I don't know, I love it, because I hope this thing keeps going, right? I need to keep my streak going and going and going.
Well, we do too. I think Tamara, for those of you that know Tamara Genlink, if you don't know her, you'll meet her. She's been a great addition to the Leadville Race Series, and Tamara has her finger on the pulse of the community. And boy, she pays attention. She's at every community event. She'll meet with every county commissioner. She'll meet with anybody and everybody that has a voice and an opinion, and try to figure out a way to accommodate and adjust. And I think she's done an amazing job of listening and trying to make those adjustments to keep us in good graces with that community.
Yeah, Tamara's awesome. Okay, one last thing. What about, have you ever considered, I mean, Lifetime's obviously got a far reach and a lot of connections. I reached out to the Guinness Book of World Records to try and get Todd and John some notification for their accomplishment. And, then it turned into a checkbook thing. Has Lifetime ever considered reaching out to them and seeing if they could, if they could get 30 consecutive finishes in a row in the book?
No, I've never thought of that, but we could certainly look into it. I didn't know that that was even a thing that they would add something like that. But I guess that would be a world record, right? For two of them, if they get, is this, are we coming up on the 30th this year?
Oh, this is 31. They got their 30 buckles
They got
last
their
year.
30th last year. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they got those big buckles last year. Um, yeah, yeah, we could. I'll ask the team. I don't know what that takes.
Yeah, it takes a phone call and a checkbook, I think, but maybe with, with, Guinness and Lifetime being up there, maybe they could, maybe they have professional courtesies that, are different than,
Yeah,
me,
we'll
you
have to
know,
find out.
find out. But that, yeah, I mean, how many more, I mean, 30 in a row, 31 in a row, probably this year. I mean,
Yeah.
that's enormous. That is an enormous accomplishment. And I think it's, it's noteworthy if you can. Here, I'm planting the seed, and I'm handing the ball and give it to you, put it in your court.
Yeah, let me see what I
And
can do.
I hope John and Todd hear, see this and hear this and at least smile.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kimo, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day. Appreciate it. It was, I was trying to keep it toward the race, but it just kind of migrated over toward, just your race, but then it kind of migrated to the race. And it was, just great to hear and just understand more about how things happen. Because it's, you guys put a lot of time and effort into keeping it going. I mean, you had a lot of growing pains, I'm sure. And it's awesome because they seem to be managed great. And the race is still going on. And I was in Venice Beach. I saw a Leadville shirt. I swear, I don't care where I go in the country, I see a Leadville something. Whether it's the buckle, the belt, the tattoo, the shirt, the jacket, I always see something. And it is, it's awesome that it's just, it is what it is. And it's getting bigger and more popular and just super cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. We're pretty lucky, like I said, to be able to do something every day that you love and to help people change their lives, as Ken likes to say. It's pretty amazing that we still get to do that. And so glad to be a part of it. And I'm really honored that you wanted to have me come on and talk to your audience. So I look forward to seeing you all out at Leadville here in a couple months.
Yeah, I'll be there for sure. That, I've already been up there. I've already climbed it, done all the course, and it's great. So, all right. Well, Kimo, thanks again.
See you up there, Mike. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Take care. All right, racers, here is some more info on the discounts. We got the quicker stuff rack. We've got the 100% helmets, gloves, glasses, prescription glasses. Reach out to me. I'll get you the discount code. We'll do one big order. Bird wheels, rope spoke, carbon hoops, super light, awesome wheels, 20% off. Carbo Rocket, 25% off your first order with Get My Buckle. Silka, waxing, bunch of different products, great products, 50% off Get My Buckle. And then Alpine Fuel Nutrition, Lindsay at Alpine Fuel Nutrition, she can get you dialed in. Carbs, calories, sodium, potassium, magnesium, everything you need to, be strong all day long. All right, racers, thank you. We'll talk to you next time. We'll see you at the finish line.